Good day, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of Compliance Clips. Today, John Farquhar and I are diving into the world of cell phone forensics with Lars Daniel, the practice leader of digital forensics at Envista Forensics. Lars has provided expert testimony in over 600 cases and is recognized as an expert witness in both state and federal courts, specializing in various domains such as digital, computer, cell phone, video, and photo forensics. In addition to his extensive courtroom experience, Lars has co-authored notable books including Digital Forensics for Legal Professionals and Digital Forensics Trial Graphics. His expertise extends beyond the written word, and he is also a sought-after speaker at major industry events like the Computer Enterprise and Investigations Conference and the NFUSE Conference, where he shares insights gleaned from his extensive forensic career. But today, you will find out that Lars brings more than just technical prowess to the table. He has a remarkable ability to distill complex forensic information into clear and understandable messaging. Join us as he takes us on a two-part journey deep into the world of digital forensics, lawsuits, and strategies for protecting against spoliation charges arising from cell phone data. Please tune into this insightful two-part discussion filled with technical details tailored specifically for trucking industry professionals.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Compliance Clips, where our special guest today is the one, the only, the infamous, and good-looking at the same time, Lars Daniel of Envista Forensics. Yay! How you doing, Lars?
My goodness. I'm doing great, but don't make me blush. That's too many compliments for me at one time. I can't take that many. Come on.
Well, give our folks here a little background on who you are and what it is you specialize and deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the practice leader of digital forensics at Envista Forensics. I've been doing digital forensics for about 15 years, specializing myself in computer, cell phone, video, and photo forensics. But I have a team of 11 experts that do everything from computer forensics to cell phone forensics, location forensics. We handle, like I said, photo and video, wearable technology, smart home assistants, you name it. If it gets electricity, it stores data. There's a likelihood that we have examined it in a case. And we look at a whole lot of cell phones and deal with a whole lot of trucking cases, that's for sure. But I myself, I've taught over 400 CLE classes here in the United States. I do a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of education. I'm really passionate about that, really informing the business, legal, and insurance communities on digital evidence and how they can use it and why it matters to them and the risks associated with it that's coming forward. So that's kind of the quick background. I've written some books and some other stuff and had some things going on, done a lot of expert testimony. I guess I should share that. I've qualified as an expert over 30 times in state and federal court in the United States, and qualified as an expert in Singapore actually last year. And as a video forensics expert for the first time, which was kind of neat. But collectively, my team has qualified as forensic experts in court over 400 times.
Wow. You're a busy guy. So, yeah, there you go. Well, and if I remember correctly, you're based down in the Carolina area, are you not?
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina. I've got labs across the United States. That's correct.
Cool. Perfect. And,
Yeah,
and Envista does more. Envista does more than just what you were talking about, but our focus today is what Lars is doing, your specialty and whatnot. So we've had. It was actually your dad who presented a couple of years ago at Fleet Safety Council at one of the conferences, which was some great information and whatnot. And we were supposed to have you, but well, unfortunately, your feathers didn't grow in time, so you couldn't fly up to join us, I guess. So cool. So we're gonna talk a bit about forensics data with used to, well, that little device that we always, every one of us has one in our pocket, that good old cell phone. So so we'll kind of break into it, but I want to share a little clip because I want to talk about a misnomer that I think too many people in the trucking industry think it's okay, we've got this covered. It's not a problem. And I'll use an example of one of my clients where, we talked about cell phone use and how we need to put more controls around it and how it can get us into trouble. And in this situation, they were like, well, don't worry, John, we got it all taken care of. We got inward facing dash cameras. And I'm like, What? All that going to do is prove that the guy was on the phone. Oh, no, it's okay. We catch him on the phone, and then we call him to tell him not to get on the phone. And I'm going, so you're literally calling him while he's driving down the road to tell him he's been on his phone and not to do this. What's your thoughts?
What's it look like to Lars when that leads to an accident?
Well, I've seen issues with both the inward and outward facing cameras. I'm not going to talk about the policies or the legal aspects of it because those are outside of my frame. But I'll give you a quick case example, especially for the inward facing cameras. We worked on one here in the United States where there were 2 trucks involved, and there was a plaintiff as well, okay? So there's 2 defendants, 2 different trucking companies. We have one of the trucks that were retained on by the defense as their experts, but we're looking also at that phone, our driver's phone, and the driver of the other trucks, okay? The other truck had an inward-facing camera. I'll get to that in a second. We look at our driver's phone first. There's nothing relevant during the time they were not on the phone, okay? We're able to conclusively show that from the cell phone forensics by looking at the actual physical device, okay? That's important to note too, which we can come back to. But the other driver's phone, even though we're looking at the video, the inward-facing video, you don't see a phone. You see, it looks like he's looking down the road, but every now and then you kind of see him glance down a little bit. So there are concerns about, maybe what is he looking at? So we examined his phone, and during that period of time leading up to the accident, in those seconds before the collision, he is on Pornhub and YouTube, switching back and forth, watching various forms of content, okay?
Oh.
So even that inward camera, you may not see a phone, but just because you don't see a phone within the scope of that camera doesn't mean there's not one there, and that's certainly an argument that plaintiff attorneys are going to be making.
Jeez, isn't that wild? I know I've heard of lots of stories from law enforcement officers here in Canada, whether it be police or whether it be DOT, MTO and whatnot, where they have seen guys who have literally have a mount for their phone to the windshield in front of the dash, in front of the steering wheel, which is out of the scope of the range of that dash camera. So it's right in tight to the windshield. The camera can't see it. So the driver looks like he's driving down the road looking out the windshield, but he's really not. He's looking at a small screen here, and too many drivers think this is okay. It's not a problem. I've got it. So,
yeah, the only true solution to that would be a true 360 camera that lives inside of that cab that would capture everything. I don't know all the options for the internal cameras that they can put inside the trucks and things like that. We kind of deal with what comes to us as evidence, so to speak. But there's certainly issues with some of those models too.
Well, I was going to say there's some great action cameras out there. We know the big brands, GoPro and whatnot. And one of the good ones, I'm into a lot of action camera stuff, and one of the ones is a 360X, I believe it is, or X360. Anyway,
yeah, I got one. I have one of those. Camera. They're awesome.
Yeah, and they're awesome. So I see eventually that vehicle cameras are going to get to that scope of that 360, because the bonus part is, it's recording 360, and I can move the camera post to kind of go, well, hang on, let's look out the window. Let's look out the side window, and I could see something that, the driver maybe should have or didn't or couldn't have seen possibly, or something like that. But yeah, so anyway, so with regards to the phones then, so when you're doing an investigation on a phone, what do? Just open it up and check to see if he's got text messages or what? Like, what if I delete stuff off the phone? You can't find that, can you?
That's a really good question. I want to back up 1 second, John, and answer and answer a question you haven't asked, okay?
Sure.
A lot of times when you have an accident, when we're dealing with these dash cams, whether it's external or internal facing cameras, the accident occurs. You go to look at that camera and you'll see, that footage isn't there, right? Because you go and you contact the company, it's not online on that cloud system. That does not mean it cannot be recovered and that it's not there. What has to happen is you take that dash cam and you can crack it open and take the data out of it in what's called a chip off procedure. You literally take the data from the chip, and that video can be on the chip. That's one of the things that we've been doing a lot more often. So that just because you're not seeing it online doesn't mean it's not there. I just want to make that point because that's not well known.
Right. Well, so let me add to that before you move on then. That can also become another concern, because if law enforcement decide to take possession of that camera, before you get your hands on it, or before that footage can be loaded to the cloud. That can be a concern.
Yeah, and then that would just be getting us access to the device so that we could actually do that chip off to get the data from it.
Yep, cool. Good deal. So
phones, what do we do and how do we look at them? Is that the next one? Okay.
Yeah, like it's pretty easy. I can just play around, but you can't see what I'm doing. This is my phone. It's private.
Yeah, I've got my hand all the way over here, so and I got really long arms and How can you what can you see when you do your forensic digging? And sometimes I'm sure the phones must get wet or burned or crunched or driven over. Are you still able to access information in those scenarios?
Yeah, so we can cover that. We can cover damaged phones here in a second. But before we do that, so remind me to talk about damaged phones if I don't get quite back to that here.
Sure.
When we're looking at a phone and we're recovering data from it, we're utilizing specialized forensic hardware and software, the same types of tools that your three-letter government agencies are using. We're literally using the same stuff as the FBI, you name it, right? We have the same capacity as they do to unlock phones. We can crack passcodes on most phones out there too. So that level of technology. Now, when we're accessing and getting data from these phones, we're able to do what are called advanced extractions in my lab that get back not only messages and deleted messages, Snapchat artifacts that are allegedly gone. We just did a case recently with that where we're able to see that the plaintiff read a text message seconds before the collision when they said they didn't even have a phone in the car. Okay, so there's lots of artifacts out there. We can get velocity logs of how fast you're going that seem to be lining up very closely to EDR reports, if not exactly, to the event data recorders in the trucks, right?
Wow.
We're recovering tremendous amounts of deleted information. We can see the applications that you're using. We can literally see, using advanced extraction, when your fingers are touching the device. We can see when you unlock the phone, when you lock the phone, when you change the orientation from horizontal to vertical, when you route your audio from your headset to the phone, to the speakerphone, back to your headset. So we can see literal fingers touching the devices these days, but that requires what's called an advanced extraction,
Right.
which we should cover. We should talk about that probably now because this is pretty important. This is one of those huge developments kind of last year that really hit, okay? I don't mean to dominate the conversation here, but I'd love to talk about this one because it's kind of critical.
Spotlight. Go for it.
There's different levels of extractions when you get data from phones. You have what's called a logical extraction. That's kind of equivalent to like an iTunes backup if you had an iPhone. It's getting still existing data for the most part that you can see as a normal user, plus some other stuff. Then there's what's called a file system extraction, which gets that data in the logical plus some more. And then there's what we all really want, which is called a physical extraction, okay? And that gets like everything on the device, including the deleted data, all the hidden files and folders and the rest. But with modern cell phones, the levels of security are requiring the use of what's called an advanced extraction to get the data because it's very unlikely on a lot of modern phones you're going to get a physical extraction anymore, okay? What does that mean? That means you have to have the tools that can actually get the advanced file system extraction. To get the punchline first, not getting that level of extraction these days in a trucking accident case means you're not getting the relevant data in a trucking accident case and can be a cause for spoliation issues here in the United States later on in cases. Because if you do a lower level extraction that doesn't get everything, then you return the phone, and then it's used by that driver or whoever else or whatever happens to it, then we don't have a perfect snapshot in time of that data in the most complete way possible, okay? So that advanced file system extraction is the new standard for data extractions from phones. That's where we're pulling the data from of it. Now, here's the issue. For most labs, it's prohibitively expensive. My annual software cost for my lab to have this technology is in excess of $500,000 a year. So it's in US dollars. So it's expensive, but you're not getting everything without it, and you're not getting these very, very important artifacts that show user activity, like people touching the device. Other extractions may be fine in like e-discovery cases. You're just trying to recover still existing messages related to something, but we all know in trucking, it's about those little tiny details.
No doubt. Yeah, that's a lot of information that I don't think the average person has any clue can be extracted and be gathered.
Yeah, and even if those phones are damaged, like you mentioned, we can actually get that data too. It works. I'll give you one of the harder examples, okay? A lot of times a phone can be damaged through water, or it can be damaged through smoke, or just smashed. We've had smashed phones too. Using chip off, like we talked about earlier with the dash cams, we can break the phone open, pull the chip out, and get the data. But that's challenging sometimes. Like with iPhones, those are encrypted at what's called the hardware level. So what does that mean? That means we can't crack the phone open and take the chip out and get the data, because it would be all encrypted. Okay. So how do you get that? What you have to do is you have to crack open the evidence phone, that iPhone that was actually used in the accident. You take the chip out, you put it into a new phone of the same model, you rebuild it, and then you can extract the data from that phone, just like you had an undamaged phone originally, okay?
Oh, wow.
So it's still possible to recover that even from a damaged iPhone.
Wow.
Yeah, this is, I think, why I refer to cell phones these days as the invisible witness to everything. It's recording activities that you aren't even aware of on a regular basis. You know, you're saying that now if you touch the phone, we've got a record of that. And I mean,
system gesture.
That if a driver were simply to touch a phone, even if they didn't look at it or anything immediately before an impact, that may or may not have been caused by their behaviors, you still got the possibility of a charge of distracted driving, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's because we're seeing not only like when you send or receive a message, so we can see when you sent one, like in some of these messaging applications, we can see like when you open it and read it, when you like click on it, different things like that. So there's actual interactions with it that don't produce necessarily new data. They just change the state of data. But that's being recorded as well. Yeah.
And that brings an end to part one of our discussion with Lars Daniel on cell phone forensics. Join us in a week when we release part 2, episode 12, and we get deeper into the nuances of exploring cell phone forensics and how they interact with other components in your vehicle, including your car's infotainment center, which will be of interest to you whether you are a trucking company or just a member of the public. Hey guys, we look forward to speaking with you. Thanks very much for being here today. Bye-bye.